My wife and daughter brought me to the finest table at L'Etoile, convinced that the man sitting across from them was nothing but a senile checkbook with a pulse. They smiled, clinked their crystal glasses, and switched effortlessly into French, discussing the nursing home, the stolen assets, and the stranger named Preston who was taking my place. They believed they were plotting the perfect crime in a language I couldn't understand, oblivious to the fact that I had spent a decade negotiating construction contracts in Paris. Before I tell you how I burned their plans to the ground, make sure to subscribe and let me know in the comments where you're watching from. They thought they were clearing away debris, but they didn't realize the demolition hadn't even started yet. The corner table at L'Etoile was the best seat in the house, designed for privacy, yet tonight it felt like a display case. The restaurant hummed with a specific frequency, the low, expensive vibration of old money, crystal clinking against crystal, silver scraping porcelain. It was a sound I used to love. Now it just sounded like glass waiting to shatter. Across from me, Veronica looked perfect, too perfect. She was a masterwork of structural engineering. Hair pinned back tight, spine straight, the diamonds on her wrist catching the chandelier's light with every sip of Pinot Noir. I bought her that bracelet for our 20th anniversary. I bought the dress. I bought the smile she was wearing. "This place is gorgeous, Mom," Ashley said. My daughter sat beside her, tapping away at her phone. She looked like a copy of her mother, only sharper, newer. She didn't look at me. She rarely looked at me anymore unless she needed a signature. Preston recommended it, Veronica said. The name hung in the air between us, heavier than the humidity outside. Preston, the business partner, the genius, the man I had never met, yet whose name had become a load-bearing wall in my own marriage. I took a sip of water. It was warm. I didn't say a word. I had learned that silence was safer. The waiter arrived, placing the ducal orange on the table with a practiced flourish. Steam rose up, smelling of citrus and fat. "Delicious," Veronica said, picking up her fork. Then the air pressure in the room seemed to drop. Ashley leaned in closer to her mother. Her eyes darted left, scanning the waiters, then right, checking the nearby tables. Finally, her gaze slid over me like I was a piece of furniture. She switched languages. The shift was seamless, rapid, and fluent. "Maman, tu es sûr qu'il ne sait rien? Mom, are you sure he doesn't know anything?" My hand froze halfway to the breadbasket. It was a micro-movement, a tiny structural tremor. My heart hammered a violent, uneven rhythm against my ribs. I stared at the butter, forcing my hand to complete the motion. Smooth, steady, don't crack. Veronica laughed softly. It was a cold sound, like ice cracking on a lake. "Ne inquiète pas," she replied in French. "The old fool has no idea what we're saying." Old fool. The words hit me with the force of a demolition ball. 25 years of marriage. A daughter I had held in the delivery room, whose first steps I had coaxed out of her on our living room rug. And to them I was just masonry to be cleared away. I chewed my bread. It was dry. It tasted like ash. Ashley didn't relax. Her manicured fingernails tapped a nervous staccato on the white tablecloth. "Are the nursing home papers ready?" she asked, her French clipped and efficient. My blood ran cold. The noise of the restaurant seemed to fade out, leaving only the ringing in my ears. Nursing home? I was 68. I ran 5 miles a week. I had designed 3 of the tallest skyscrapers in Chicago. I wasn't sick. My mind was a steel trap. "Next Thursday," Veronica answered, cutting her duck with surgical precision. The knife scraped against the plate, a harsh, screeching sound. 5 days from now. Then we'll be free." Free? Free from what? From me? I stared at the woman I had loved for half my life. The candlelight softened her features, but it couldn't hide the predator underneath. She wasn't my wife anymore. She was something else entirely. Ashley checked her phone again. The blue light illuminated her face, making her look pale, almost ghostly. A small smile touched her lips. "Preston says everything is arranged," she whispered. I reached for my wine glass. The crystal felt impossibly heavy. Like lead? Thursday. 5 days. That was the deadline. That was when the foundation would give way. "Dad?" Ashley switched back to English. The transition was jarring. Her voice pitch rose, becoming sweet, concerned, fake. "You're quiet tonight?" I looked up. I had to build a facade right now. I had to construct a mask of confusion and mild senility. I arranged my face into a soft, slightly vacant smile. The smile of an old fool. "Just enjoying the food, sweetheart," I said. My voice sounded distant to my own ears. This duck is incredible. Lies. I was learning to lie too. It really is. Veronica reached across the table, her fingers wrapped around my hand. Her skin was cold, clammy. I'm so glad we could do this, she said, squeezing my fingers. Just the three of us. Just the three of us. 2 hunters, 1 prey. But they had made a mistake, a fatal design flaw in their plan. They didn't know about Paris. They saw the gray hair and the reading glasses. They didn't see the decade I spent from 1991 to 2001, managing construction projects in France. I didn't just speak the language to order wine. I negotiated contracts in it. I argued with union leaders in it. I dreamed in it. Ashley leaned forward, whispering in French again. Has Dad's memory gotten worse lately? Veronica nodded. A tragic, practiced nod she must have rehearsed in the mirror. Yes. Last week he forgot where his wallet was. I almost laughed. A bitter bubble of hysteria rose in my throat. I hadn't forgotten my wallet. I had left it in the glove compartment on purpose. I wanted to see if she would notice. I was testing the load-bearing capacity of her loyalty. She wasn't just watching me. She was taking notes. She was building a case to lock me away and strip the assets I had spent a lifetime accumulating. The check came. I paid. I always paid. The black credit card looked sleek on the silver tray. Next time, we bring Preston, Veronica murmured in French as she gathered her purse. Next time, Ashley agreed. They stood up, smoothing their dresses. They thought the game was over. They thought the building was already condemned. But they were wrong. The demolition hadn't started yet. I stood up, buttoning my jacket. My hands were steady now. The drive home was a study in structural tension. The silence in the Mercedes wasn't peaceful. It was the kind of silence that precedes a sheer failure in a support beam. Outside, the New York skyline was a blur of indifferent light. Thousands of eyes watching a man who didn't know he was already dead. I pulled into the driveway of the brownstone. $8.2 million of limestone and history. It used to look like an achievement. Now, in the harsh glare of the headlights, it looked like a high-security prison. Good night, William, Veronica said as we entered the foyer. The marble floor echoed the click of her heels. She leaned in, pecking my cheek. Her lips were dry, the contact brief. It felt less like a kiss and more like a stamp of approval on a demolition permit. Sleep well. She ascended the stairs, her shadow stretching long and thin against the wall. I watched her go, waiting until the soft click of the master bedroom door sealed the upper floor. I didn't sleep. 2:47 a.m. The house settled around me, groaning in the cooling night air. I sat in my study, the leather chair cold against my back. The only illumination came from the blue, spectral glow of my laptop screen. My hands, usually steady enough to draft blueprints with millimeter precision, trembled as I typed the URL for Chase Bank. Login. 2-factor authentication. Enter. The loading circle spun. A hypnotic digital eye. The dashboard materialized. I blinked. I rubbed my eyes. Hard. Until stars danced in my vision. I looked again. Checking account, $12, $247. Savings account, $45. My breath hitched, a sharp, ragged intake of air that burned my throat. The numbers blurred. The balance should have been $5.5 million. That was the legacy, gone, vaporized. I clicked transaction history with a numb finger. Red text cascaded down the screen like a severed artery. February 3rd, wire transfer. I clicked transaction history with a numb finger. Red text cascaded down the screen like a severed artery. February 3rd, wire transfer. $1.5 million. Repesiment, PM Ventures, LLC, February 10th. $1.2 million. Cayman Islands, February 17th. $1.8 million. I stared at the recipient of the final transfer. A. Bennett. Ashley. My stomach turned over. A physical lurch of nausea. Not a gift. I never authorized a gift. I clicked the digital signature attached to the transfer. There it was, my scrawl. The same jagged wobble, the same looped B I'd used on blueprints for 40 years. But I hadn't signed it. Someone had practiced. Someone had studied the architecture of my handwriting until they could build a perfect replica. I leaned back, the leather creaking loudly in the silent room. This wasn't just theft. Theft is random. This was an execution. They were stripping the copper from the walls before they bulldozed the building. I needed a structural engineer for this kind of disaster. I needed a hunter. I grabbed my phone. My thumb hovered over the contact. David Ross. He wasn't just a forensic accountant. He was a weapon in a suit. We'd worked together when a contractor tried to embezzle from the Millennium Tower project. David was the one who found the money in a shell company in Belize before the cement had even dried. William? His voice was gravel, thick with sleep, but sharp. It's 3 a.m. They cleaned me out, David, I whispered, my voice barely holding together. 5 million. Gone. Silence on the line. Then, the distinct click of a bedside lamp, the rustle of sheets. Send me the logins, David said. The sleep was gone. He was in the field now. Now, I forwarded the encrypted files. 5 minutes passed. The silence in the study was deafening. I could hear the blood rushing in my ears, a hydraulic hissing. Then David's voice returned. It was hard, flat. The voice of a man looking at a crime scene. Jesus, William, tell me. PM Ventures, LLC. Registered in Delaware. 2 weeks ago. Who owns it? Managing member, David hesitated, Ashley Bennett. I closed my eyes. The dark behind my eyelids was filled with her face. The little girl who used to cry when she scraped her knee. Now she was the CEO of a shell company, designed to bankrupt her father. Who is Preston? I asked. The name tasted like bile. Working on it, running facial rec on the social media scraps you sent. The sound of rapid typing filled the line. Aggressive, percussive. Got him. Who is he? His name isn't Preston Miles. David took a breath. It's Patrick Miller. Status? FBI wanted list. Wire fraud, identity theft, hits in 4 states. The room spun. A federal fugitive. Sleeping in my house? Or sleeping with my wife? He targets families, David said, reading from the file. He seduces the wife, uses the kids as proxies, drains the accounts, vanishes. He's a parasite, William. He finds a host, eats it hollow, and moves on. My hands clenched into fists. Check Veronica's email, I said. Look for hidden folders. She thinks I'm senile. She won't have changed the password. I could hear David hacking, the keystrokes flying. Password, Ashley 2003. Got it. Folder, Archive 2024. 63 emails. Read the first one. January 8th. He believes the bank error story. We need to move faster. Keep going. January 22nd. Ashley signed everything. She thinks it's trust restructuring. The girl has no idea. I stopped him. The girl has no idea. I stopped him. The girl has no idea. A tiny, painful spark ignited in my chest. Hope. It burned, hot and bright. Ashley was being played. She was guilty of stupidity. Yes, guilty of greed, perhaps. But she wasn't the architect. She was just another brick they were moving around. One last email, David said. February 16th. He paused. Read it, David. Thursday gives us everything. I can't wait to be done with this. 25 years of pretending. I closed the laptop. The blue light vanished, plunging me into darkness. Pretending. My life was a facade, a movie set. William? David asked. I see it, I said. My voice was dead. Thursday is the deadline. I know that gives us 5 days. You need eyes on the ground, David said. I can track the money, but I can't stop a fugitive from getting on a plane. I'm calling Jim, I said. Jim O'Connor, security consultant, ex-military, the kind of man who didn't ask questions, just solved problems. Do it. And William? Yeah? Don't eat anything she cooks. Monday morning broke with the color of wet concrete. The city felt heavy, the air pressure low and headache-inducing. I didn't go to the office. Instead, I drove to a medical plaza in Midtown, a glass and steel monolith that smelled of antiseptic and expensive insurance. I needed to find the cracks in their foundation. I needed to know who was signing off on my destruction. Dr. Aris Thorne, neurologist. His office was too white. The walls, the floors, the furniture. It was a blinding, sterile white designed to make you feel small and dirty. Thorne sat behind a glass desk that looked like a sheet of ice. He was younger than I expected, with a kind of manicured beard that took more time than his patient charts. He tapped a silver pen against the glass. Click, click, click. Mr. Bennett, he said, not looking up from a file. I wasn't expecting you. My wife says I'm sick, Eris, I said, remaining standing. I didn't want to sit. Sitting was for patients. Standing was for architects inspecting a site. He shifted in his chair, the leather squeaking in the silence. Finally, he looked at me. His eyes were watery, weak. Veronica is concerned. She sent over some notes. Notes? About your memory, confusion, aggression. He said the words like he was reading a menu. I'm not aggressive, I said quietly. My voice was level, measured, the voice I used when a contractor tried to cut corners on rebar. That's what the aggressive ones say, he muttered, almost to himself. He pulled a thick file from a stack. I've prepared the competency report for the court. The room seemed to tilt. A competency report. That was the wrecking ball. With that document, they could strip me of my rights, my decisions, my life. They could lock me in a room while they spent my money. You haven't examined me, I said. You haven't run a single test. You haven't seen an MRI. I have Veronica's testimony. It's sufficient. He wouldn't meet my eyes. He stared at a point over my left shoulder. Medical discretion. I leaned forward. I placed my hands flat on the cold glass desk. I saw him flinch. How much? I asked. Excuse me? How much did she pay you, Eris? To sign a paper saying a healthy man is losing his mind? Thorne stood up abruptly. His chair rolled back, hitting the wall with a thud. Sweat beaded on his upper lip, tiny glistening betrayals. I think you should leave, he stammered. If you sign that paper, Eris, you're not a doctor, I said, leaning closer. You're a co-conspirator. I'm doing what's best for the family, he snapped, his voice cracking. Get out, or I call security. I walked out. I didn't slam the door, I closed it gently. I had what I needed. He was terrified. He was the weak link in their chain. They had a doctor, they had the paperwork, and the trap was set for Thursday. I drove to Brooklyn. I needed something real. I needed structure that wouldn't collapse under pressure. Patricia, my sister. Her house was a brownstone too, but unlike mine, it felt lived in. It smelled of coffee and old books. She opened the door and pulled me into a hug that threatened to crack my ribs. You look like hell, William, she said, pulling back to inspect my face. Nice to see you too, Pat. I sat at her kitchen table, the wood scarred from years of family dinners. I told her everything. The bank accounts, the shell company, the Preston, who was really a fugitive named Patrick Miller. She listened, her face hardening like stone setting in a mold. She didn't gasp. She didn't cry. Patricia was a Bennett. We didn't break, we endured. I knew it, she whispered when I finished. The anger in her voice was a low rumble. What? I saw them, she said. She got up and walked to the counter, her movements heavy. 6 months ago, in the village, I was leaving the theater. She pulled out her phone. Her thumb hovered over the screen, hesitant. I took pictures. I hoped I was wrong. I hoped it was a cousin, or a client. But deep down, I knew. She slid the phone across the table. I looked. Photo 1, Veronica and a man. Him, Patrick Miller. They were at a corner table by a window, candlelight. She was holding his hand, laughing with her head thrown back, a laugh I hadn't heard in 5 years. Photo 2, them on the sidewalk, kissing. It wasn't a peck on the cheek. It was intimate, comfortable, possessive. He had his hand on the small of her back, claiming her. My stomach dropped, a free-fall sensation like an elevator cable snapping. I felt bile rise in my throat. It wasn't just the money. The money was just numbers. This was my history being rewritten. Why didn't you tell me? I asked. My voice sounded hollow. I was afraid, she said, sitting down opposite me. I didn't want to break your heart, William. You looked content. It's broken now, Patricia. I stared at the image of my wife kissing the man who was stealing my life. The man who was going to put me in a home and rot there while he lived in my house. A cold calm washed over me. It was the feeling of clarity you get right before a storm hits, when the wind dies down and the air turns green. Send them to me, I said. William, what are you going to do? Patricia asked, fear creeping into her eyes. You can't go back there, not tonight. I looked at the photo one last time. I memorized his face, the slope of his nose, the arrogance in his smile. I'm not going to run, I said. I built that life. I built that fortune. I stood up. I'm going to burn it all down. Tuesday morning, I met Jim O'Connor at the Plaza Hotel. The suite was quiet, insulated by heavy velvet drapes that shut out the city. It smelled of stale coffee and expensive upholstery. Jim had flown in from London overnight. He looked the same as he had 10 years ago, square-jawed, graying at the temples, eyes that missed nothing. He brought Lucas, a forensic tech who looked barely old enough to rent a car. Lucas sat cross-legged on the floor, surrounded by a nest of cables and a laptop covered in stickers. He was chewing gum, a slow, rhythmic motion that grated on my nerves. "So," Lucas said, popping a bubble, "you want me to mirror her phone? Can you do it?" I asked. "If she's on the same Wi-Fi network?" "It's child's play. I just need to bounce a signal off the router. She'll never know." "Do it," Jim said. His voice was low, commanded. "We need to know their next move before they make it." I watched the screen as Lucas typed. Lines of code scrolled past, green text on black. It felt invasive, dirty. I was spying on my wife? But then I remembered the photo of her kissing Patrick Miller. I remembered the nursing home brochure. "Done," Lucas said, hitting enter with a flourish. "Her texts are syncing to your iPad now." I picked up the tablet. It felt cold in my hands. The messages started populating. Preston, Patrick. Did he sign the trust? Veronica, not yet. Tonight. I'll corner him after dinner. Preston, push him. If he resists, call Thorne. We commit him early. Commit him early. The words floated on the screen, sterile and terrifying. They weren't talking about a husband or a father. They were talking about a defective asset that needed to be liquidated. "They're getting desperate," Jim said, reading over my shoulder. "Look at this," David said, walking in from the bedroom. He had his laptop open. "I found a flight manifest." He turned the screen toward me. "Friday, 11:45 p.m., JFK to Singapore. First class, one way. Passenger, Patrick Miller." "Just one ticket?" I asked. David nodded slowly. "Just him. He's leaving her, William. He takes the $5 million, gets on a plane, and vanishes into non-extradition territory. Veronica is left holding the bag. She takes the jail time." I stared at the screen. A strange, twisted pang of pity hit me. She was destroying me to build a future with a man who was already packing his bags. She was a predator, yes, but she was also prey. My phone buzzed on the table. An unknown number. I hesitated, then answered. "This is William." "Mr. Bennett?" A woman's voice, trembling, breathless. "Who is this?" "Elena Russo." "From the bank." I froze. "Elena Russo. From the bank." I froze. "Elena," the junior VP who handled my personal accounts. "Elena, I shouldn't be speaking to you," I said, my voice dropping. "I know I shouldn't be calling. They are watching me." She was crying. I could hear the stifled sobs, the sound of fear. "Who is watching you?" "The man. Preston. He came to my house, Mr. Bennett." The temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. "He went to your home? He knew where my kids go to school," she whispered. "He showed me pictures of them on the playground. He said if I didn't approve the wire transfers, he'd hurt them." My blood boiled. It wasn't a figure of speech. I felt a physical heat rising in my chest, a pressure behind my eyes. This wasn't just white-collar fraud anymore. This was violence. This was a man threatening children to get to my money. "You're safe now, Elena," I lied. I didn't know if she was safe, but I needed her to be strong. "I need you to be brave for 2 more days." "Can you stop him?" "I'm going to do more than stop him," I said. "Can you testify? If he's in handcuffs? If he can't hurt my boys?" "Yes. He won't touch them, I promise." I hung up. My hand was shaking, not from fear, but from rage. I looked at Jim. "We end this," I said. Friday. Wednesday evening, 6 p.m. I drove home. The brownstone loomed against the twilight sky, its windows dark. It looked like a mausoleum. I walked inside. The air was still. Dust motes danced in the shaft of light from the street lamp outside. Veronica walked in from the kitchen. She was wearing a cashmere sweater, the color of oatmeal, soft, harmless. She carried a leather portfolio under her arm. "William," she said. Her voice was too bright, too loud for the empty room. "We need to talk." She sat on the sofa, patting the cushion beside her. "I've been worried about you." I stayed standing near the fireplace. "I'm fine, Veronica." "You're not. Dr. Thorne says you're deteriorating." She put on her concerned face, eyebrows pulled together, lips slightly parted. It was a mask I had seen 1,000 times, but only now did I see the strings. She pulled a document from the portfolio. It was thick, bound in blue paper. "Irrevocable family trust. This protects you," she said, holding it out. "It puts the assets in a trust managed by me and Ashley, so you don't have to worry about the details anymore. It gives you control of everything," I said, making no move to take it. "Someone has to manage the money, William. You're confused, you're forgetting things. And if I don't sign? The mask slipped, just for a second. Her eyes went flat, dead. The loving wife vanished, replaced by the woman who had laughed at the old fool in the restaurant. Then I have to call Dr. Thorne, she said. Her voice was level, reasonable. And the police. Thorne will testify that you're a danger to yourself. We'll have to commit you, William, for your own good. I looked at her, really looked at her. You'd do that? I asked softly. After 25 years? I have to, she said. Sign it, or you spend tonight in a cell. The ultimatum hung in the air. I looked at the pen she was offering. A Mont Blanc. I had given it to her for her birthday. I had to sell the performance. I had to let the foundation crack so she wouldn't see the reinforcements I was building underneath. I took the pen. My hand shook, partially acting, partially the sheer adrenaline coursing through my veins. I signed, William Bennett. The signature looked weak, shaky. She snatched the paper away before the ink was dry. Good, she breathed. The relief was palpable. She stood up, checking the signature, ensuring it was legal. Then she leaned in and kissed my forehead. I love you, William. She walked away, clutching the paper like a trophy. I heard her heels clicking on the hardwood, retreating up the stairs to call her lover. I waited until I heard her door close. Slowly I reached into my pocket and pulled out the digital recorder. The red light was blinking. 43 minutes. Coercion, threats, blackmail. Every word recorded in high fidelity. I hit send. The file uploaded to Jim's secure server. Got it, came the text response a moment later. I stood alone in my living room. The house felt alien, stripped of warmth. But for the first time in weeks, I didn't feel like a ghost. I was the architect, and I had just laid the trap. Thursday morning broke with a relentless, driving rain, the kind of weather that scours the city clean, washing away the grime in the gutters. I hoped it would do the same for my life. I sat in a conference room at the FBI field office in Lower Manhattan. The room was soundproofed, the air recycled and stale, smelling faintly of ozone and floor wax. On the steel table, my digital recorder sat like a grenade. Agent Karen Morrison leaned against the wall, arms crossed. She looked like she was carved out of granite. Sharp features, tired eyes, a posture that suggested she hadn't slept in a week. Jim O'Connor sat next to me. David was typing furiously on a laptop in the corner. Play it again, Morrison said. I pressed the button. Veronica's voice filled the room, tinny and distorted but unmistakable. Sign it, or you spend tonight in a cell. My voice shaking. You'd do that? I have to, for your own good. I stopped the tape. The silence that followed was heavy, pressurized. That's coercion, Morrison said, pushing off the wall. Elder abuse, extortion. Combined with the wire transfers, we have enough to bury her. And Miller? I asked. Do we have him? Patrick Miller, she corrected. She threw a file onto the table. It slid across the metal surface and stopped in front of me. We've been chasing him for 3 years. He hits widowed socialites in Palm Beach, divorcees in the Hamptons. But this, targeting a living spouse, an active family, this is an escalation. He's getting greedy. We arrest them now, Jim said, his voice a low rumble. We pick them up at the house. No, I said. The word hung in the air. Morrison looked at me, her eyebrows raised. Why wait, Mr. Bennett? You're bleeding money. Every hour he's free is a risk. He has a flight Friday night, David cut in from the corner. Singapore. Non-extradition. If we spook him now, if he sees a squad car within a mile of that brownstone, he runs. He has a go-bag. He has a backup identity. He vanishes, I finished. And my wife takes the fall alone. I want them both. Morrison studied me. She saw the exhaustion in my face, the lines etched by sleepless nights, but she also saw the steel underneath. I wasn't just a victim anymore. I was the project manager of their downfall. The gala, I said. The Bennett Foundation Gala is tomorrow night. The charity event? Morrison asked. It's the highlight of their social calendar. 500 guests. The mayor might be there. French investors. All of Veronica's friends. I leaned forward. Miller is giving a speech. He wants to play the hero one last time before he disappears. He'll be surrounded, Jim added. Nowhere to run. And the humiliation, it forces them into the open. Morrison nodded slowly, a predator recognizing a trap. High risk. If he smells a setup, he walks. He won't, I said. He's arrogant. He thinks I'm a senile old man who just signed away his life. He thinks he's won." Morrison sighed, rubbing her temples. "Okay, we do it your way. But we need eyes on you 24/7 until the gala. Can you handle that? Can you walk into that ballroom, sit next to the woman who betrayed you, and smile?" I thought about the coldness of Veronica's hand, the way she looked at me like I was a condemned building. "I've had practice," I said. Thursday night, I didn't go home. I couldn't stomach the idea of sleeping under the same roof as them. I checked into the Plaza Hotel under the name O'Connor. The suite was luxurious, impersonal. I stood by the window, watching the rain streak the glass, distorting the city lights into smears of neon and gold. My phone rang. The screen lit up, Ashley. My heart gave a painful structural lurch. I hesitated. Part of me wanted to throw the phone against the wall. Part of me, the father, the man who remembered teaching her to ride a bike in Central Park, wanted to answer. I swiped green. "Dad?" Her voice was tight, anxious. "Hello, sweetheart," I said. I forced the tremor out of my voice. I pitched it slightly higher, slightly weaker, the voice of the old fool. Are you coming tomorrow to the gala?" "I'm planning on it," I said. "Why? Good. Mom is really happy you signed the papers, Dad." She was worried. "I bet she is. Dad," she paused. I could hear her breathing. "Preston is really helping us. You know that, right? He's fixing the accounts. He's making sure you're taken care of." "Is he?" I asked, looking out at the dark city. "He seems like a capable man." "He is. He's amazing." The way she said it, breathless, admiring, made my stomach turn. She wasn't just conspiring with him. She was infatuated. She was in love with the idea of him. The savior, the genius, the man who would take over the burden of her aging father. She was being played just as hard as I was. Maybe harder. I was losing my money. She was losing her soul. "I'm glad you're happy, Ash," I said. It was the hardest lie I had told yet. "I am, finally." She sounded relieved. "We're going to be a real family again. Just structured differently." Structured differently. A euphemism for cutting out the rotting wood. "I'll see you there, sweetheart. Love you, Dad. Love you too." I hung up. The silence in the room was absolute. I walked to the minibar and poured a glass of water. I stared at my reflection in the mirror. Gray hair, lines around the eyes. They thought the demolition was finished. They thought the dust had settled, but they forgot one thing about architecture. Before you build something new, you have to clear the site. And clearing the site is a violent, messy business. I finished the water. I set the glass down. Tomorrow the walls would come down. Friday, 6:30 p.m. The Foundation Ballroom. It was a space designed to intimidate, 30-foot ceilings, acres of gold leaf and chandeliers that dripped crystal like frozen tears. The air was thick, recycled and perfumed with the scent of lilies and expensive desperation. I stood in the foyer, adjusting my cufflinks. They were gold, engraved with my initials. My father's? I felt like a soldier buckling on plate mail. Jim stood to my left, scanning the crowd with professional paranoia. Patricia was on my right. She wore black, severe and elegant. She linked her arm through mine. "Head up," she whispered, her voice a steel rod in my spine. "You're a Bennett. You built half the skylines in this room." "I'm ready," I said. We walked in. The noise hit us first. A wall of polite chatter, the clink of silverware, the string quartet playing something baroque and bloodless. Then the eyes. Heads turned. Whispers started, spreading like cracks in a windshield. "There he is, the old man. The one who lost his mind." I saw them. Table 1, center stage. Veronica was wearing red, a violent slash of lipstick red, that demanded attention. She looked radiant, the grieving wife bearing her burden with sainthood. Preston Patrick sat next to her. The Preston Patrick that wise meet. Falcon Perig. Canning Hamulus Anielid, tamen at all the four of the base of clack the 5. He wore a charcoal tuxedo, tailored to within an inch of its life. He looked comfortable. He looked like he owned the room. He saw me. He didn't flinch. He didn't look guilty. He smiled, a wide, benevolent smile that made my skin crawl. He stood up, smoothing his jacket, and walked toward us. The room went quiet. They were watching the transition of power. The old lion and the young usurper. "William," Preston called out, his voice projecting just enough for the nearby tables to hear. "So glad you made it." He extended a hand. I looked at it. The hand that had signed my checks. The hand that had touched my wife. I took it. His grip was firm, confident, the grip of a man who thinks he's holding a winning lottery ticket. "Thank you, Preston," I said. My voice was mild. "I wouldn't miss it. Your seat is right up front," he said, guiding me like an invalid. "Next to Veronica. She's been so worried about the noise. The crowd. She was afraid it might be too much for you." He lowered his voice, dropping into a conspiratorial whisper. "But don't worry. I'll handle the speeches. You just sit back and relax." "You're giving a speech?" I asked, feigning surprise. "Just a few words about family. About the Foundation's future." He beamed. "I think you'll be proud." I fought the urge to break his fingers right there. "I can't wait." We reached the table. Veronica looked up. For a second I saw real fear in her eyes, a flicker of the woman I used to know, but it was gone instantly, replaced by the mask. "William," she breathed, reaching for my arm. "You look tired." "I feel fine, Veronica." "Sit down, Dad," Ashley said. She was on the other side of Preston, looking pale. She poured a glass of water. "Here, drink this." I sat. The chair was velvet, comfortable, a trap. I scanned the room. Agent Morrison was at the bar, nursing a club soda, her eyes scanning the exits. Lucas was near the sound booth, a laptop open on his knees, looking like a bored techie. 3 waiters near the kitchen doors were standing too still, their eyes too alert. FBI, 7:30 p.m. The lights dimmed. A spotlight hit the stage. Preston stood up. He buttoned his jacket, touched Veronica's shoulder, a gesture of ownership, and walked to the podium. Applause. It was polite, respectful. These people respected money, and they thought he controlled mine. "Thank you," Preston said. His voice was smooth, practiced. "Thank you all for coming." He paused for effect. He was good. He had the charisma of a televangelist. "Tonight is about legacy," he began. "It's about the structures we build to protect the ones we love." He looked down at our table. He looked directly at me with a sad, pitying smile. "We all know the burden of love," he continued. "My partner, William Bennett, has built a legacy of steel and glass. But even the strongest foundations weather." The room turned to me. Sympathy, pity. Poor old man. Veronica dabbed a fake tear from her eye. Ashley looked down at her plate. "Veronica Bennett is a saint," Preston announced, his voice thickening with emotion, caring for her husband through his decline, managing the trust, ensuring that the Bennett name survives even as the man fades. I sat stone still. My heart rate was steady. 60 beats per minute. I was the bridge holding the weight. I just had to wait for the stress test. "William," Preston said, opening his arms. "Why don't you come up here?" The room gasped softly. "This wasn't in the script." "Come on," Preston urged. "Say a few words. The crowd would love to see you." It was the kill shot. He wanted me to stumble. He wanted me to ramble, to forget words, to show the room that I was broken. He wanted to publicly validate his theft. Veronica's eyes went wide. No. She shook her head slightly. She knew it was a risk, but Preston was drunk on power. He insisted. "Come on, William." I stood up. My legs were steady. I buttoned my tuxedo jacket. I didn't use the cane they had tried to give me. I walked to the stairs. Step, step, step. The sound of my shoes on the wood was rhythmic, precise. I reached the podium. Preston stepped back, clapping, a smug grin plastered on his face. He thought he was handing the mic to a ghost. I took the microphone. It was cold metal, heavy. I looked at the crowd. 500 faces. I looked at Agent Morrison in the back. She gave a single, almost imperceptible nod. I looked at Preston. I smiled. It wasn't the smile of an old fool. It was the smile of the architect who just found the fatal flaw in the design. "Bonsoir à tous," I said. My French was impeccable, crisp, resonant. The room went silent. The murmurs stopped. Preston's smile faltered. His brow furrowed. He didn't speak French. I continued. My eyes locked on his. "Je veux vous raconter une histoire à propos d'un voleur." I want to tell you a story about a thief. Veronica dropped her purse. The heavy thud echoed in the silence. The French investors in the front row sat up, exchanging confused, intrigued glances. I switched to English. My voice dropped an octave, becoming the voice that had commanded construction sites for 40 years. "For those of you who don't speak French," I turned to Preston. He looked like a deer in the headlights. The arrogance was draining out of him, replaced by a dawn of terror. "The man standing next to me," I said, pointing a finger at his chest, is not Preston Miles. I raised my hand toward the projection booth. Lucas, now. The screen behind me, 20 feet tall and usually reserved for charity logos, flickered. The gentle blue background dissolved into static, then sharpened into high-definition brutality. A mugshot. It was colossal. The man in the photo wasn't wearing a tuxedo. He was wearing an orange jumpsuit, his hair matted, his eyes dead and cold, but the face, the nose, the jawline was unmistakable. Patrick Miller, wanted, wire fraud, identity theft, extortion. The silence in the ballroom shattered. It wasn't a gasp, it was the sound of 500 people inhaling shock at once, a vacuum of disbelief. His name is Patrick Miller, I said. My voice boomed through the speakers, steady, deep, vibrating in the floorboards. He is a federal fugitive. He has stolen $5.5 million from the accounts you entrusted him with. And he did it with help. Preston, Patrick lunged for me. He's confused, he screamed, his voice cracking, the smooth baritone gone. He grabbed for the microphone, his face twisted in a rictus of panic. He's having an episode. Cut the sound. Someone get a doctor. I didn't step back. I didn't flinch. I pivoted, shoulder-checking him with the weight of a man who had hauled lumber before he drew blueprints. He stumbled back, colliding with the podium. I am not confused, I roared. The volume made the feedback squeal, a piercing shriek that made the front row cover their ears. I am the man who caught you. I pointed to the screen. Lucas, next slide. The mugshot vanished. In its place, a spreadsheet appeared. Rows of red numbers. Wire transfers. Look at the recipient, I commanded. The text was large enough to be read from the back of the room. PM Ventures, LLC. Managing member Ashley Bennett. A scream cut through the murmurs. It was Ashley. She was standing at table 1, her hands pressed over her mouth, her eyes wide with a terror that looked absolute. She wasn't acting anymore. She was watching her life disintegrate in 4K resolution. My daughter, I said, the words tasting like ash in my mouth. And my wife. Veronica sat frozen. She didn't scream. She didn't move. She looked like a statue of Lot's wife, turned to salt, staring at the destruction of her city. Lies, Patrick yelled, looking for an exit. He scanned the room, sweat pouring down his face, melting his makeup. Deepfakes, this is a setup. The old man is insane. Is he? The voice came from the back of the room. It wasn't loud, but it carried the weight of a sledgehammer. The double doors burst open. Emily Davis. She walked down the center aisle. She was 7 months pregnant. One hand resting protectively on her stomach, the other clenched into a fist at her side. She wore a simple coat, cheap and worn, a stark contrast to the diamonds and silk around her. She walked straight toward the stage. Her eyes were locked on Patrick. Emily? Patrick whispered. The microphone caught it. The color drained from his face, leaving him gray. She stopped at the foot of the stage. She looked up at him, tears streaming down her face. Not of sadness, but of pure, molten rage. You said you were buying a house, she said, her voice trembling but clear. You said we were starting a family. You took my grandmother's pension, Patrick. You took everything. Emily, listen to me, he started, holding out a hand. You left me with nothing, she screamed, the sound raw and primal. You left your child with nothing. She climbed the stairs. Security didn't stop her. No one moved. She walked up to him. He backed away, hitting the screen behind him. Smack! She slapped him. It was a solid, meaty sound that echoed through the ballroom. FBI, nobody move! Agent Morrison stepped out from behind the bar. Her weapon was drawn, held low but ready. Patrick Miller, she shouted, her voice cutting through the chaos. You are under arrest. The spell broke. Patrick bolted. He shoved Emily aside, nearly knocking her down, and sprinted for the service exit to the right of the stage. He was fast, fueled by adrenaline and desperation. Stop him, someone shouted. He made it 3 steps. A waiter, the one who had been refilling water glasses all night, dropped his tray. He moved with a blur of motion, tackling Patrick at the waist. They hit the carpet hard. A table overturned, sending crystal glasses shattering across the floor. Get off me! Patrick screamed, thrashing like a trapped animal. 2 more agents swarmed him. I watched from the podium as they pinned his arms, forced his face into the deep pile carpet, and ratcheted the handcuffs tight. Click! Click! You have the right to remain silent, Morrison recited, kneeling beside him. Anything you say can and will be used against you. They hauled him up, His tuxedo was torn, his nose bleeding. He looked at me. There was no charm left, only hate. "You old bastard," he spat. "You were supposed to be dead." "I'm still standing," I said quietly. Agents moved to table 1. "Veronica Bennett," an agent said, flashing a badge. "Conspiracy to commit wire fraud, elder abuse." Veronica stood up. She looked small. The red dress, so vibrant minutes ago, now looked like a costume. She looked around the room, searching for an ally, a friend, anyone. The faces that met hers were cold, judgmental. She looked at me. "William, please." Her voice was a whisper. She took a step toward the stage, her hands reaching out. "I was scared," she sobbed. Tears ruined her makeup, black streaks running down her cheeks. "He made me do it. He said he'd kill me. I did it for you, William, to save you." She looked desperate, pathetic. I looked down at her from the stage. I looked at the woman I had built a life with, the woman who had sat in that restaurant 5 days ago and called me an old fool. "Save me," I asked. "Yes, please, tell them. Tell them I'm a victim." I leaned into the microphone one last time. "I'm sorry, Veronica." My voice was flat, empty. "I don't speak liar." The agent took her arm. She shrieked as the cuffs went on. A high, thin sound of socialite horror. They dragged her away, her heels scraping across the floor. Then, Ashley. She wasn't running. She wasn't fighting. She was sitting in her chair, shaking violently. "Dad," she cried out as an agent touched her shoulder. "Dad, I didn't know, I swear." "Come on, Miss Bennett," the agent said gently. "I didn't know he was a criminal," she screamed, looking back at me, her eyes pleading. "I thought it was just the trust. I thought we were just taking control." "Taking control," I repeated to myself. I watched them lead my daughter away. She looked like a child again, terrified and lost. But she had signed the papers. She had managed the LLC. Ignorance was an explanation, not an excuse. The ballroom was chaos. Flashbulbs popped. People were shouting, tweeting, filming. I stood on the stage alone. The screen behind me still showed the red text of my betrayal. Jim walked up the stairs. He placed a hand on my shoulder. "It's done, William," he said softly. "The structure is down." I looked at the empty spot where my wife had sat. "Yeah," I said, "it's done." The adrenaline didn't leave my body all at once. It seeped out slowly, replaced by a cold, gray numbness. We spent the rest of the night at the FBI field office. The fluorescent lights hummed with a headache-inducing frequency. I sat in a plastic chair, drinking coffee that tasted like burnt rubber, answering the same questions over and over. "When did you suspect? How did you get the recordings? Did you fear for your life?" Agent Morrison was gentle but thorough. She was peeling back the layers of my marriage, documenting the rot. "Mr. Bennett?" she asked, sliding a statement across the table. "You need to sign this." I looked at the paper. It was a witness statement against my wife. I closed my eyes. A memory flashed, unbidden, unwanted. Veronica, 10 years ago, sitting on a beach in Cape Cod, the wind in her hair. She had looked at me and said, "I don't know what I'd do without you, William." It was a lie then. Or maybe it wasn't. Maybe people change like weather, eroding over time until the coastline is unrecognizable. I picked up the pen. My hand didn't shake this time. I signed. The aftermath justice moved surprisingly fast. With the recordings, the bank transfers, and Emily Davis's testimony, there was no room for defense. The structure of their lies collapsed under its own weight. Patrick Miller. The court didn't buy the misunderstanding defense. The judge, a stern woman who had seen too many con men, looked at him with pure disdain. Sentence 18 years. Federal prison. No parole. He didn't look at me as they led him away. He looked at the floor, defeated, small. The tuxedo was gone, replaced by the orange jumpsuit he belonged in. Veronica. She took a plea deal. She gave up everything, the contacts, the offshore accounts, the names of the notaries she bribed, in exchange for leniency. Sentence 7 years. I saw her one last time at the sentencing. She looked older. The Botox had worn off, revealing deep lines of stress and bitterness. She didn't cry. She just stared at the wall. A woman who had gambled her entire life on a bad bet and lost. Ashley. This was the wound that wouldn't close. My daughter. She testified. She told them everything. How Preston charmed her. How Veronica pushed her. How they convinced her I was losing my mind. Sentence, 3 years probation. House arrest. Restitution. She avoided jail time because she cooperated, and because the court saw her for what she was, a pawn. 1 month later, I drove to the brownstone. The for sale sign was already up. I unlocked the front door. The house smelled of dust and lemon polish. It was silent. The furniture was still there, draped in white sheets like ghosts. I walked through the rooms. The dining room where we ate the duck à l'orange. The kitchen where Veronica used to hum while she made coffee. The living room where Ashley took her first steps. It felt like a museum of a dead civilization. I stopped at the fireplace. There was a photo on the mantel that the movers had missed. The three of us in Aspen, 5 years ago. Smiling. Happy. I picked it up. The glass was cold. I realized then that I wasn't grieving the loss of my family. I was grieving the loss of the illusion. The family in the photo hadn't existed for a long time. I was just the last one to notice. I placed the photo face down. I walked to the front door. I placed the keys on the console table. The metal clicked against the wood, a final definitive sound. I walked out. I didn't look back. 3 months later, Paris. The morning air over the scene was crisp, smelling of rain and fresh bread. I sat in my new office in the 7th arrondissement. The sign on the frosted glass door read, Bennett O'Connor Consulting. Jim was in the other room, arguing loudly and happily in French with a contractor about steel grades. I opened my desk drawer. A letter lay there, postmarked from New York. Ashley. I had read it a dozen times. Dad, I don't expect you to call. I don't expect you to forgive me. I just wanted you to know that I'm working, a real job. No trusts, no handouts. I'm trying to find out who I am when I'm not trying to be what Mom wanted. I hope you're safe, Ashay. I didn't write back. Not yet. Trust is a structure that takes years to build and seconds to destroy. Rebuilding it would take time, maybe a lifetime. But I kept the letter. Jim walked in, holding 2 espressos. Client meeting in 10 minutes, he said, setting the cup down. The structural retrofit for the gallery. I'm ready, I said. I stood up and walked to the window. Below, the city of Paris was waking up. Boats drifted down the river. People rushed to work. Life moved on. I looked at my reflection in the glass. I was 68. I was single. I had lost a fortune and a family. But I wasn't the old fool. I was the architect. I took a sip of the coffee. It was strong, hot, and bitter. It tasted like reality. For the first time in 25 years, I wasn't maintaining a crumbling facade. I was pouring a new foundation. And this time, I was building something real. Part 9, Final Closure. Narrator. Trust is a dangerous thing. It can build a life, or it can destroy it. William Bennett learned that the hard way. He learned to verify. He learned to fight. And he learned that it is never too late to start again. Thanks for walking this journey with us all the way. With William and Veronica in mind, was this ending justice? Or was it mercy? Let us know in the comments below. And don't forget to subscribe for the next story.